This conference will now be recorded.
Hi, welcome to Whose Information Will I Need for My Financial Aid Application? My name is Christina Winstead, and I'm the Assistant Director for Outreach at the Washington Student Achievement Council. I work with the 12th Year Campaign. Basically, what I do is help students, seniors like yourselves, all across Washington State complete a financial aid application. Today, you're going to learn about dependency status. You're going to learn if you're considered dependent or independent. You're going to figure out who your parent is if you're considered dependent, and where you can find help with this process. And of course, we always talk about why is this important? We're telling you about all these different things about financial aid, and why is this video important? It's important because students are considered dependent or independent for financial aid purposes. No matter what, you're always going to be considered dependent or independent. And understanding your situation, it can help you complete your application correctly and not be selected for verification sometimes, or I've even had students not understand if they were dependent or independent and answer questions wrong, and they've had to redo their application. We want to make sure that you understand your situation and whether you're dependent or independent because it can maximize your financial aid opportunities, is what we always want for you. So, dependency status. Your dependency status determines whose information is going to be reported on the application. So, students are either considered independent or dependent. If you're independent, you're just going to report your own information. And if you're married, your spouse's. If you're so that's for independent students. If you're independent, so dependent students, most students are considered dependent students until the age of 24, and you will report you and your parents' information. So, are you dependent or independent? On the right category here, independent students, this is a list of all the reasons why a student would be independent. If you don't meet any of these criteria, typically you'll be considered dependent. So if you are married, you're considered independent. If you're 24 years old or older, then you're going to be independent. If you're 23 and you don't meet any of the other criteria, you're still dependent. If you are going into a graduate or professional program, that means you've completed your bachelor's and you're moving on to the next level of education. You'll be considered independent. If you're a veteran or a member of the armed forces, also independent. If you have been in foster care anytime after the age of 13 and have not been legally adopted, if you're a ward of the court, if you're an orphan, if you have a legal guardianship, these are all things that would trigger an independent status. Now, why is this important? Because it means you only have to provide your information for financial aid as opposed to you and who they consider a parent. So it's important if your situation is different than others to reach out and talk to a financial aid officer. So if you're not listed in the independent student status anywhere on here, none of these meet yours, but you can't provide parent information because let's say your parents are incarcerated or you don't have a relationship with your parents and you haven't seen them in a long time and you have no connection with them. Those are things that when you complete your financial aid application, it'll say, hey, you're dependent because you don't meet any of these criteria. And you can actually select a box and say, I want to talk to a financial aid officer. I can't provide parent information. And then what that's going to do is trigger an application's not complete, but you can then reach out to a financial aid officer to talk to them about your situation. If you don't meet any of the criteria for being independent, you'll be considered a dependent student. Dependent students need to provide their own information. They also need to provide their parents' information, including 2019 tax return, if applicable. If not, W-2s, pay stubs, bank statements. They will also need information about child support statements, uh, TANF, as well as any asset information. If you're an independent student, you're going to need your own information. That includes taxes, W-2s, same information that you would need if you were a dependent student. And independent students are not required to provide parent information. When you fill out your FAFSA and WAFSA, it'll say, do you want to provide information for your parents if you're independent? And you can just select no. So we talk a lot about parents. We're going to quickly brush over this, but I want to make sure you understand there's another video in this series that will walk you through who your parent is. We know that for financial aid purposes, if you are considered dependent, you will also have a parent a person they'll consider your parent, which can be kind of troubling because you're like, wait, these are both my parents, or this person may not legally be my parent, but I consider them my parent. This is just for financial aid purposes and nothing else. So I know that that terminology can be kind of concerning, but this is just for the world of financial aid. If your parents are married, it's going to be both your parents' information that they need to provide. If they are remarried, then you're going to want to make sure you provide the information for the parent that you live with the most and your step parent. Single or widowed, it's going to be the surviving parent. If your parents are unmarried, separated, or divorced but living together, it's going to be both parents. So if they're living together and they're not married, it's still going to be both of their income. And then divorced, separated, and not living together, it's going to be the parent you live with most. So who do you spend more nights? What house do you spend more nights at? And the thing with that is making sure you think about, I know a lot of parents will say, well, we have a 50-50 split. It's 365 days in a year, so you're going to spend one night more at one house than the other. So you want to determine which one's going to be your parent and get that information. Please don't provide information from grandparents, foster parents, unless they've legally adopted you, legal guardians. These are not considered parents for financial aid purposes, even though they are supporting you in a way that a parent would. Special circumstances. So I talked about that a little quick earlier, but I want you to understand that for special circumstances, especially if your parents are incarcerated, if you are in an abuse environment, if you have a no contact order, things like that, you want to make sure you fill out your application, select that you can't provide parent information for special circumstances, and then contact that college. What is not a special circumstance is if you have a relationship with your parents, you're considered dependent, and your parents tell you, we're just not providing this information to you. If your parents don't provide the information that's required, if they want to provide that data to you, unfortunately, typically, and sometimes not even at all, you will only be eligible for loans. So you really want to talk to your parents about why they're concerned about providing that information, because it does impact you in the amount of awards you're allowed to accept. So here are the resources from today. Who is my parent? So this infographic, I encourage you to sit down and you can walk through who your parent is for financial aid purposes. We have a workbook that you can go through that will walk you through all of the different financial aid steps. And then of course, we have texting help from Otter. So you can sign up for Otter and get help with all your questions about financial aid. So your next steps, you're going to determine if you're independent or dependent for financial aid purposes. And then you're going to use the Who's My Parent chart to determine who your parent's going to be. Then you're going to start collecting the information needed to apply for financial aid. Remember, the application opens October 1st. And if you need any help, you're going to reach out. Please reach out to a financial aid officer, your high school counselor. You can always reach out to us. We want to make sure you have all the support you need as you navigate this process. We also have other videos to help you with different processes in financial aid that will walk you through resources and information to help with each step of the way. Thank you so much, and we wish you the best of luck applying for financial aid.